Yeah.
Professor, we can't hear you.
Hello. Just shortly. Don't worry.
Okay. All right.
There we go. Okay, so this too is up as well. I think you can adjust. Okay.
Q&A. Is there any questions? Okay. Hello. Hello. Very sorry for the delay, but we are here now and ready to move forward. Welcome to day 5 of this workshop. And again, we just to remind you of the objectives or the objective of this workshop that we have been engaged with for a couple of days now. Today is day 5, 11th of August. And as is our usual practice, we shall do a recap. But for those that have been following, our agenda is very clear. The items in red, we have covered in one way or another. The items that remain in black we have not covered, and that is our work plan. So we will put up a few slides on work plan and budget. We will give you some hints and tips on how to write a good introduction. And then there was that controversial phrase, abstract. And then we'll close it up with title. So that is our game plan for today. And we hope that we'll catch up on lost time. We apologize for the delay. We hope that we'll have time created towards the tail end, such that we work with some examples from students who we are ready to upload as of yesterday. And we go through a brainstorming and a discussion with you, such that we get real examples from your work. I hope you're hearing us. Can the moderator simply shout out yes, so we are able to continue? Otherwise, the challenge with virtual engagements, sometimes—
Yes, doctor, we're going to hear you.
Okay. So sometimes you can take off at a tangent and yet you're speaking to yourself. So friends, by way of, oh, what is this now? It's not moving. Yes. It's, the computer today has come for real. It is hanging. Hello? Yes,
Rika?
I couldn't reduce it when it is. So friends, we are at time for recap, and we would like to hear from you. We would like to hear from you from the discussions that we had yesterday. Recap. Largely yesterday we were doing reference listing, literature review, citations, and reference listing. So what did you learn? What did you not learn? What is changing your practice? Please go ahead, and our practice is to get at least 10, but now we can limit it to 5 since we've lost some time. Although we've lost some time, we cannot just continue because this is not a one-way traffic. We are interacting with participants. So we would like to create that opportunity for interaction. Martin, can you please give opportunity to at least 5 participants to say something? It is also our icebreaker for the workshop. Hello, did you hear me? We are waiting on you. Hello?
Hello, Prof.
Yeah, please go ahead.
How are you?
We are good. How are you?
I'm good. Artur is going to help the participant to allow them to talk.
Okay.
Because I don't have the right now.
Okay.
Yeah. So Artur, go to the attendees list. Some of them are raising their hand.
I can see the question of materials sharing is coming up. The question of other certificates is coming up. We have answered these questions again and again, so we will not say anything on those. Sample size is again coming up. I'm not clear on how to choose a sample size for unknown population like fishing. Yes. What is the standard sample size? We would like to refer you to literature. Yes, please go ahead. Hello. Kindly go ahead, please. Yes, go ahead.
Yes. Now I've allowed the Shikuku. Please, Shikuku, introduce yourself. Please introduce yourself and open the mic and tell us which university you are from.
Yes, my name is Seth Shikuku from Maseno University. Thank you so much. Yesterday, it was a very good training and I was able to pick up something important about citing the same work from an author who has written different articles in the same year. It was beautifully coming out. However, I would request that we be able to understand something on citing your own work, if something will be repeated on that properly and to come out clearly if you are citing your own work written within the same year, if there's anything different. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shikuku. Doctor?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for the, can we get all the 5 at once, then we'll respond. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Now, I'm going to allow George. George, please introduce yourself and tell us where are you from and which university from. George, please. Go ahead. Okay, I can see that George maybe is facing some challenges. Now, allow me to ask Aranda. Aranda, please introduce yourself. Aranda, please introduce yourself. Okay, I think so. Also, Aranda is facing some challenges. Yes. Now I can maybe call the Edinas. Please, Edinas, introduce yourself and tell us where are you from and which university.
I thank you so much. I hope you are able to hear me.
Yes, but not very well.
We hear you. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm Sarah Edinas from Chambo, Uganda. And I really thank you for this session.
Yeah,
and what I would like to put across is the how to write the proposal. For instance, you made some changes that I'm not sure that our supervisors will agree. Now, for instance, saying that if possible, or for smooth running of the proposal, that you may bring the topic at last, the introduction second last. I'm really confused. I don't know how I'm going to, because I wanted to change my proposal according to how to the updates that you given me, but I don't know whether my supervisors will be satisfied with me. That is what I wanted to put at the stance.
Okay. And the last person?
Yes, last person, Sensio, please introduce yourself and tell us where are you from and which university.
Yes, I'm called Sensio Ikiliza. I'm from Uganda, and I'm doing a Master of Science in Agriculture at Uganda Matters University in Nkozi. Yes, I want to appreciate our facilitators, but for the last 4 days, I'm getting to learn and convinced that the research is systematic and scientific. And the key points that I noted is how one should review literature basing on the SWOT analysis. It is a very key learning that I picked throughout this learning. Then also, I also got to know that reviewing journals, one can easily get rich information. That one I didn't know it, and really it is going to enrich me at the research that I'm doing. Then also, what I also want to let you know that I was able to learn that each objective should stand alone, and at master's level, we should avoid what we call compound objectives. At times we could set objectives that are hard to be achieved. Then also on day one, I learned that for any study that we do, we should be in mind about the theory where your research or your topic sits. Then also characterization of research. So it is also key as we are doing our proposal. And one thing that I learned, that if we follow what we learned, I'm very sure that we are going to produce very good research studies, and in the future they will be used to inform decisions and cause change. I thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We are happy to hear all these testimonies. 5 days together is quite a significant amount of time, and we are pleased that there is learning. Citing your own references, and that the text is just full of your own references, we called that self-citation, and we said that it's possible that you are inbreeding, and it's an indication that you're probably not bothering to do in-depth literature search, to check elsewhere, but you are only speaking to yourself. It can't be that you are the only person that has done studies on that particular topic, because new knowledge is built on old knowledge. And so you need to move away from inbreeding and do self-citation all the time. You can cite a few. Yeah, it's okay. It's not a crime. You can cite a few, but not. We said if you have 15 references, you cannot have 3/4 of the references coming from your work only. Maybe 3 of the 15. That's okay. How to write a proposal, and how to convince the supervisor. What is the thing is, the supervisor is more interested in the product. The process is with you. You know how you arrive at the title, and it's a good title, is what the supervisor is looking at. So that means you have to go through a process, and as you go through that process, you present a document to the supervisor. This document could be in draft because the supervisor is going to give you comments. So it's not that you're going to the supervisor and tell them, now this is my problem statement. That is also fine, because they will see the process that you're going through. But the supervisor ultimately is interested in a good product. And the process that we are going through is a process that gives you a good product. And just to remind you that the process which we've called step by step is a process, but the presentation of the proposal is what we know, that it's not presented upside down. You present the title first and what, but the development of it is that the title comes last. Yeah, so the thing is, we are emphasizing a process that is logical, that is step by step, that will give you a product that is robust, that will have less queries, will have less back and forth, and so on and so forth. Yes, research is systematic and it is scientific, and literature is not just an assemblage of information that you cut and paste, but you have to do a real synthesis of your literature. I think I sort of missed the second person, Byron, but I think it was largely a comment. So friends, thanks for the recap. Oh, I think there's, yes, Byron, yes. Byron was in the comments in the chat. Byron Eriong, and I think we agree with you because we said you cut off segments of your objective, and then those segments of your objective are part of the variables. As you write your literature, you will not be far off. You will not misfire. You will be spot on. So friends, now that we are done with the recap, we now would like to quickly go through in the step by step those 4 items that remain. And the first one is work plans and budget. A proposal is supposed to have a work plan, also referred to as a time or task chart or schedule of activities, depending on what your university guidelines actually say. Yeah, there's some university guidelines will not say work plan, they will say schedule of activities or task chart, because they will look at a work plan as probably a heavy word or phrase of words that is for big projects or that are donor-based projects. It is in this section that we explain what combination of inputs will be needed, when and in what quantities to achieve the desired outputs. So sometimes this work plan is actually a narrative and not just a table or something. So there is a table and also an explanation. And this picks directly from materials and methods minus having a summary of activities from the time it starts to the time of completion. Okay, sorry. Now, some of the activities for your thesis could be identification of study sites or identification of respondents. It could be pre-testing arrangements. If you have a questionnaire, a tool, it could be the establishment of treatments and the materials and how you're going to acquire them. So you have short phrases that you put up into a table or a narrative, and fertilizer NPK will be used. You've already given that in the materials, but now how are you going to get the fertilizer? You say purchase of fertilizer from national stores. And you put the timeline when this should be done, and so on and so forth. And then, of course, you can't forget the reporting plans. I know in some universities, every 3 months, students write reports and take them to the graduate school. So you have to put the reporting plans in that sequence, indicate when you expect your draft thesis, indicate when you expect the second draft and final draft, indicate the defense and seminars that you're going to undertake, and the defense to the department, and finally the submission of the final thesis, the examination period, and internal examiner, external examiner, and then when this will be done. Now, sometimes this may go for projects and not thesis research proposals, but you may need monitoring and evaluation. This can be as simple as field visits, because the supervision team may require that you take them to the field. We have seen situations where students collect data by proxy. You put them in the vehicle and you say, okay, we are now driving to the field, and they can't show you where the field is, but they have data. When you try to dig it up, this data is being collected by assistants in the field and then sending it to the student. So the student is not aware of what is happening in the field. Now, that is not good training, because if you're a master's, PhD student, they experimentally out the field site, how the slope is moving and whatever, how the respondents give the answers, cannot just be left to field assistants. You are part of the team, and the field assistants are only helping you to marshal the work that you have. Otherwise, you have to be deeply involved in your work, such that you get to know how it is moving. And it's also a process of learning, because then if you're a scholar and you're going to be in academia, how are you going to help students under your watch to design experiments on ground, yet you only used field staff? So it's very important that you engage on it and be there. Now, this section is drawing directly from the materials and methods. And so there is implications for the budget. This section can be done innovatively. You can use graphs, bar charts, tables to present it. And here is an example. Seed selection, who is responsible, and this may be more for projects, but in this case, who is responsible, or where is the source coming, and the timeline, and so on and so forth. So you put your segments of your activities, including seminars, defense, and data analysis, how you'll acquire the data analytical tools, and what, GenStat this, or Minitab this, and so on and so forth. Now, the budget is another very important section of your proposal. I noticed that sometimes in thesis research proposals, students work on this very lightly. They don't pay attention to it. But whether it is for thesis research proposal or grant proposals, normally these sections, the summary, the objectives, and the budget is what makes sense to many people. Because your head of department may not necessarily be a virologist. They may be in agronomy and you're in virology. They may not necessarily be animal scientists, but you're in crop science. But when they look at the summary, the objectives, and the budget, then they will know that you're in serious business, and that you have a budget established, and that from the summary, they can try to understand what you're doing, and that your objectives actually make sense, and that the research can be flagged off and accepted for research purposes. Some departments have ethical committees that can clear research, review boards, research review boards, and ethics. And this is what they look at. They look at the summary, the objectives, and the budget, because some departments have too many students and you're not going to read word by word, paragraph by paragraph, literature review, and this. So they look at these three sections and make a decision. So it's important that a student has a budget for their proposal. Now, this budget should have a title. The title, the project is the title of the budget. Although it is part of the document, again, you must have a title that your research is on this and this. So you say budget for the title for your research. The currency and denomination with the degrees of rounding off, the totals for each year in each line and in each line item, a grand total, footnotes for each line item, and inclusion of all costs, including those of partners. Now here we are talking about partners, which is more typical for projects and not thesis research proposals. But then you may be doing your PhD and the work is funded by different entities. You may be you're moving to Nairobi at IRIRI, or you're going to ICRISAT, or you're going to CIAT, and these people have offered to make a contribution. This is why in theses, finally we shall have an acknowledgement section, and that acknowledgement section is actually stemming from here, and you are saying, I would like to thank the Rockefeller Foundation for supporting this research. I would like to thank CIAT for the bench fees. I would like to thank IRIRI for the protocols that they provided. So this in-kind contribution should also be reflected in the budget. Otherwise, when you go for defense of your proposal, they will be asking you that now you're talking about this protocol. Where is the evidence that you actually have facilities for arriving at this protocol, or at least testing this and so on and so forth. So it's important to include these things. Now, some things that are obvious in budgeting may not look so obvious, but every line item in a budget should be footnoted with unit costs. And in general, budgets should be shown in figures rounded off to the nearest. I think there's one country that had very interesting dollars, and these dollars had so many zeros at one point in time. Fortunately, it's now stabilizing, but you can imagine if those 0, 0, 0, zeros were to feature in a budget for a master's student, then it would be quite a challenge. Budgets should be realistic and not greedy. You know, a greedy budget is one which has costs in per diem and allowances that are far way too much compared to the operational costs. And the advice normally is that a good budget should have at least 70%, up to 70% operational costs. And the other 30% is where you're getting them. But it's important to avoid under budgeting, because under budgeting is a promise that you will not deliver. You know, in the process of trying to present a modest budget, we may end up under budgeting. You have 5 sites. These sites are at very big distances. Some countries in Africa, you know, like in Uganda, our borders from Kampala, I think the longest distance you could take from the city is 600 kilometers. But if you go to countries like Mozambique, if you take a flight from Maputo to Nampula, it is 2.5 hours. So that's quite a distance. If you're moving on the coast by bus or by that is transport alone could be quite an amount. And because we are saying that a budget should not be greedy, you will end up under budgeting transportation costs, and then you can't even get to your project sites. So that can be a challenge. There is advice that bay windows can help in budget negotiations. A bay window is an extra that you can actually do away with. For example, it is advisable by statistics that an experiment should have at least 3 replications at a minimum. So you can have 5 replications in your research design, you end up with 4. So, or you end up with the bare minimum, 3 of them, and the 2 are dropped. And that means the 2 that were included in the proposal were actually bare windows for negotiation. Indirect costs are legitimate and they should be included in all budgets. Every proposal, no matter how small, should have a summary budget. And normally, even in the summary, you present that this research undertaking will cost this amount. So that is your summary budget. And sometimes this is also given by the different contributors. And you say this work will cost $10,000 US, and of this will come from the university department, and the other is personal contribution. But then I also have a contribution from IFS, the International Foundation for Science, or from DFID, or from USAID, and so on and so forth. And sometimes these partners are funding virtual activities. So you will say the USAID will make a contribution to the agronomy, the wild fish will contribute to the feeds and feeding, and so on and so forth. So, and that becomes important because then it gives you an indication of where you're coming from. I think in the interest of time, the direct cost maybe.
Direct cost is the cost towards the activities of the project. And indirect costs might be like secretarial services, like electricity, and probably space where you are working from. Yeah, we just wanted to clarify that.
So in this case, if you're doing research in a lab, bench fees would be an indirect cost. While costs towards reagents would be a direct cost. Okay. Any questions on budget? We don't expect many there because I think this is something that you always do easily. Unless you'd like to have some clarifications. Any quick questions before we proceed? Hello?
Yes, Doctor. Maybe there's a question from the Q&A. There's a participant which is asking about citation. If you can start from 2023 to 2010, maybe just make some clarification for this question.
Oh, it's in Q&A.
Yes, please.
We expected questions on budget and we had moved away from citation, but that's okay. Well, I am there. What is the question? Can you read it?
The question is, yesterday talked about citation. Is it okay to start, for instance, 2023, 2015 to 2010? Or it should be the other way around?
You follow guidelines because universities normally give guidelines, and that section on proposals and reference listing and citation. They will tell you use the upper or use Chicago or use, they will normally tell you what to use. So you follow guidelines. But if it is in terms of old literature and new literature, yesterday we said 5 years is what is considered new literature. But you can stretch it to between 5 to 10 years, but it's really 5 years and below. And it could even go up to more if there is no literature on that subject, although we discouraged that statement where people say there is no literature. There is another interesting question in the chat. If I am sure that my research is not funded by anybody, you said DFI no funding. Is it still mandatory to present a budget section? Yes, it is. Because where are you getting the resources to do the work? Even if it is, even if it's personal resources, having a budget is proof that you will actually be able to deliver on the work. So a budget is a very important section in your proposal, and you need to have it. I've seen many proposals in the department because when students come to defend, the focus is on the science. And sometimes we rarely look at the budgets, but your supervisors should guide you. A complete proposal should have a budget. And in some universities, in this case, if you're a self-sponsored student, because students that are on projects, there is normally supervision fee and supervisors are paid. So in this case, where would the supervision fee come from? Universities normally charge research funds or something, so departments organize and provide supervision fee. So some supervisors will be looking out for this line. Yes, I am working, but how will I be paid? And sometimes this causes problems because if your proposal does not have evidence of how a supervisor will be paid, then there will be the supervisor will be very disinterested in your work. And unfortunately, these things happen. Student A delivers their thesis 2 weeks. Student B delivered their thesis earlier, but student A, who is on a Rockefeller project, because it is funded and the resources are flowing in the right directions, the time spent by the supervisors is being compensated, then the supervisors tend to focus more on students that have clear budgets because their timelines for graduations are also that tight, pegged on the donor funding. And students that have self-supported research normally suffer the brunt of delays. Is it allowed to make adjustments in the budget after submission of the proposal? Yes, it is. It is allowed. Yeah, it is allowed because the budget is based on realities, I think. Yeah, so it is very allowed. Yeah. And this now will be between you, the department, and your supervisors. Yeah. And normally, very rarely will a proposal not be accepted to proceed to field work be based on budget. Although we said it's really very, very important, and maybe this is one of the reasons why students get stuck. They proposed so much work, 5 objectives. Sometimes they didn't know the implication, and they get stuck. So they are waiting for money, and you can clearly see that they are stuck. So friends, thank you. And sorry for the slide that we presented at the top. I think it was not the right slide, but here we go. We would like now to move to introduction, writing a good introduction. And my colleague, Professor Jess, will take us through writing a good introduction.
Okay, good afternoon, wherever you are. although introduction is one of the first items to appear in a proposal, as you can see, we write it last. And one of the reasons is it is only after knowing the borders, the boundaries of the proposal that you can ably take care of everything contained in the document, in the introduction. Of course, like a title and abstract, introduction must be attractive. It must be inspired. There must be an inspiration to get people to read your work. And so, as we said, the principle is to write from broad to specific. And as you write, and that's the inverted pyramid. And as you tend to be specific, you also tend to move away from simple language to technical language. Okay. An introduction, of course, it's like writing a letter. It's best to start from where you stopped, where everybody knows at where very few know. Or even if you are writing a letter to one person, you have to start from where that person is familiar towards where you want him to be informed about whatever the news is. Okay, so yeah, this is what I've been talking about generally. In many cases, the introduction should start with developmental things towards the value of research in addressing those developmental issues. We talked about R&D, research for development, so I'm not going to repeat that. Okay, if you recall the time when we were looking at problem analysis, we said mind mapping or mapping out the problem tree outputs is an entry point, it's a good starting point for writing a very rich introduction. Depending on the guidelines you are using, an introduction can be one piece segmented into paragraphs. But in many guidelines, introduction is subdivided into background, etc. And you really realize that in the introduction, there are many subtitles that are almost talking about the same thing, like justification, significance, rationale. The content is more or less the same, but here what the reviewer is doing or the development partner is doing is to cross whether in each connection with the problem. In many cases, people write justification differently than significance, very differently. And so very quickly, the evaluator will know that your document is not serious. Okay. Yeah, we've talked about literature. Of course, all the way through the document, you need to have up-to-date literature so that people can appreciate that you are not duplicating or trying to do routine work. Write precisely, that is, say what you want to say and say it now. Don't zigzag around and confuse the reader. Logically, there should be scientific logic in what you are saying. And there should be increasing news as you write. The news you are bringing into the knowledge sphere should be increasing, and therefore keeping the reader glued to what you are saying. Of course, it has to be narrative, like a story, because this is one document, and every section should be linked with the other section. And of course, we have to avoid bullets, because bullets disconnect ideas. Okay. Avoid vague expressions and hard terminology, say in the background, because hard terminology will be understood differently by different people. And referring to dictionary all from the subject, yeah, background. And background is that broadness of the introduction up there. Where are you coming from to say this? What is the scope of this work in terms of geographical area or intensity of the problem? Right up, so that somebody comes to agree with you that yes, this is important. Of course, not everybody who will read your proposal will be somebody from your field. And as we said last time, those who will sign last or sign the document, approve, are normally not scientists, natural scientists. So if you are working on a gene which is going to change the system in terms of productivity, resistance to diseases, tolerance to drought, don't start with the gene straight. Start a little bit simpler so that the executive who will sign will know that this is important and it fits within the mandate of the institution that is giving you funds. And then even if you now go to the details and technical issues, it will make a lot of sense, because finally the results will be valued for addressing some of the elements within the institutional priorities. Problem description or statement. Obviously, when you are writing an introduction, you are introducing the problem and showing how you are going to address, to design a study to address it. Now, in there, you have a lot of information in the background and other sections. But either the reader or the development partner would like to get the dimensions of the problem. we normally see the length, width, and height of the problem, which is scattered within the introduction. Again, this is to cross-check to see how serious and how capable you are to pursue a study in this field. Justification, it's a form of significance, and significance will be the impact this study will lead to when successfully done and the outputs used. So justification will be normally used at the point when different submissions, proposals are being evaluated to compare which one, or to rank which one stands best in terms of delivering outputs against the institutional mandate. I think hypothesis and testable, we covered that. Okay, the introduction of a proposal depends on discipline, target readers and their interests, level of science. Okay, we can leave the last bullet first. A proposal that is written for thesis, it tends to be read by fewer people compared to a proposal prepared for a project. In fact, when you write a proposal for a project, you don't know much about who will read and evaluate the proposal. But the one for a thesis, more or less, you know, it's the academicians, and most especially the panel that will be selected from the academic mission, from your discipline. So the contents also follow the same string. If you are writing a proposal for a project, you will start from a bit far, embracing a lot of the socioeconomic issues pertaining to a country, and then coming down to what you are going to do. If you are writing a proposal for a thesis research, you start from near the problem. From near the problem. If you start from far, you become, your work becomes not focused. And as we said, scientists don't have a lot of time to read irrelevant issues. If you are talking about cassava, more or less everybody in agriculture knows cassava. But if the problem, the issue is with the cassava disease, maybe fewer people will know about that cassava disease because it becomes very technical. But you cannot write from cassava. Normally we see things like cassava belongs to this order and to this genus, to this. And yet your work is on cassava disease. Not botany. Not botany or what. And usually your supervisors are selected because they come from that kind of area. So it is best to start from the cassava disease, the impact of cassava. Okay, you can say the importance of cassava, in a given area that is affected, and quickly move to the constraint caused by cassava disease, so that you don't waste time. Remember, the scientist has no time, and we are writing using an inverted pyramid. Okay. Okay, this is again about the inverted pyramid. You can start global, ending up with the specific location where you are going to do the work. It can be continental, regional, or start local, depending on if this work is specifically important to a country, then there's no way you are going to start global. And if the work is important to global and you write it local, then you are going to lose their assessment based on scope. How many people will benefit from this research if it is done and it is successful? Of course, if it is like COVID-19 and you are looking at Ghana, and COVID-19 covers the whole world, why should you write as if it is Ghana affected alone? Ideally, then what you do, the title, for example, and the introduction within the introduction should be global, and then keep coming down and use Ghana as a study site. Okay, Ghana becomes a study site representing areas that are affected by COVID-19. Yeah, significance, we've talked about this. Yes, but when you are writing significance, empirical evidence is normally necessary to support your arguments. Okay. 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 I think we can take some questions, but introduction is an area that everybody is familiar with. It's like when somebody is presenting a paper, they are not going to run into the technicalities of the study. Rather, they will start, depending on the audience. I mean, if possible, you do audience analysis and you would know where to start from. Start from their knowledge towards the news that you are presenting. So can we get some questions or suggestions? Hello? Hello?
Hello, Prof. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yes, please. So let me maybe ask colleagues here, participants. I can see many hands here, such that maybe they can provide their questions.
Okay.
Yes, please. Adil, please, Adil, unmute yourself and introduce which institution are you from? Adil, please, can you hear us? Okay. I'm choosing randomly. Piri, introduce yourself.
Hello.
Solomon, yes, Solomon, introduce yourself.
I'm Solomon Piri from Malawi. Lilongwe University of Agriculture and Natural Resources. Just want to seek clarification from Prof. For instance, if I'm working on the impact of COVID-19 on business performance, just for example, between COVID-19 and business performance, which part should be covered most in the background? Is it the COVID-19 or the business performance? Because I've been studying papers, it's like some people, they talk about something which is in the background. They cover most about talking about COVID-19 instead of the business performance, like the response variable. And some people, they talk much in the background, the response variable instead of the the predictor variable. So I just want to seek clarification. The background, is it the predictor or the response variable that is covered most? Thanks.
It depends on where the problem lies. Is it in the business or is it in the, what is there? Is it in the business or is it in COVID-19? However, as you write, you have an area you belong to. If the area is business and not health, I would prefer that you emphasize more business and then bring in COVID. Because your area is business. But if you start emphasizing COVID-19 and then bring in business later, it's going to defeat the reader to know whether you have the capacity to do that research. So COVID-19 affecting business. Business is the center, and then you are bringing in COVID-19 as a constraint. So the emphasis should be on business, I think. And which business? You mean all businesses? You still have to rank businesses so that you choose the one of highest priority and focus on that.
All right, sir. Thanks.
Yeah. Next.
Prof, for the clarification, now I'm going to allow Edward. Please, Edward, go ahead, introduce yourself and ask the question.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, this is Edward from Bishop Stewart University in Mbarara. Actually, I wanted to ask Professor back on literature review, as I'm doing a research on pertaining the impacts and adoption to food security and livelihood income. So if I'm doing a literature review, do I include the adoption, the income, and food security in the literature review? Thank you.
Definitely, because title, the keywords, we call them keywords, the most important words in the title and in the objectives should be reflected in literature review. But that should not be all, even more.
Okay.
Yeah, because for a thesis, what you are doing is to put together literature which you will use for the discussion. It's a chapter, but only to train you how to source literature, how to use it, and how to synthesize it. But that's not all. It is to prepare you for the discussion which will require literature. Because at the level of discussion, if you are running to the library and you know how disruptive looking for literature is, you go there and find nothing that day. Then you have to go another day. Then By the time you come back to your document, you have lost the trend of the flow of information which you had earlier on.
Okay, thank you.
And after doing the discussion, of course, you go back to the literature which you collected in the proposal to see whether it is still in line with what you have found out. If there is anything off, you trim it off. If there is anything you found in literature that is important and necessary to have a section in literature review, let me say it again. If you found something and discussed it and sourced literature in the abstract, but that literature is missing in the literature section, you go back and create sections to account for that other new literature you have referred to. Okay?
I have another question. I would like to get more clarification on in-kind contribution on budgeting from the previous participant.
Sorry, say that again. Budgeting?
I would like more clarification on in-kind contribution in budgeting.
In-kind contributions. Yeah,
Yes.
for example, if you're doing research that requires you to analyze samples outside your station, and you go to a laboratory in another station, they may not charge you anything. It is, but then nothing is for free. They bought reagents, you're using their lab space. So it's like they have invited you to work. Sometimes we don't cost that input, but it's an important input, because if you had no invitation, you still would find a way of working on that sample that you collected.
And that will be accumulated.
Okay.
So contribution that is not in the cash.
Okay.
And can be quantified in cash.
Okay, next.
Okay.
Maybe we take two more.
Yes, Richard Mwamali, please go ahead, introduce yourself and unmute and ask the question. Richard, can you hear us? Okay, it seems that Richard is facing some challenges. Now I'm inviting Clayton. Please unmute yourself and go ahead with the question.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I'm Clinton Ochieng Otieno from Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, undergraduate students. I have a question. Is it possible to cover all perspectives in background? For example, you cover global perspective, continental perspective, regional and local perspective in background.
If it is you see what we are saying?
Yeah.
If you say global, this is a global problem, then you don't need to segment into continental and whatever. But if it's a continental problem, you probably have to demarcate areas within the continent where this problem is precisely.
Okay.
Yeah.
The next question can be the objective and the significance of the study be the same in proposal writing?
Significance of study is emphasizing the problem from which the objective was derived.
Okay, thank you.
So when you say significance, it relates to if this problem is not addressed, what will be the impact on the communities that are affected? Or if this problem is taken away, what will be the benefits on the same community that is affected? And that can be used by development partners to compute the money and then see whether that's a project they want to fund.
Okay.
Okay, so are we done?
Yes, maybe the last question. Yes. Hello.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Maybe the last question, is there possibility to change the hypothesis proposal after carrying out your project according to the results obtained?
Unfortunately, the proposal is supposed to help you to implement the research. But after you have finished the research, maybe to refine it, maybe you have now understood more about the problem and now you want to refine when writing. That's okay, but not to alter it too much, because you asserted that by removing this, we are going to cause this. Okay, and the answer is yes or no. Is there an answer in between? I'm not so sure. So now you have got the results to support the yes in your research section and discussion, and I don't know how you are going to come back and again change your hypothesis statement.
And negative results are also results.
Yes.
So if the results are saying no, you don't have to untwist them.
No. Otherwise, it implies that you already knew the results before you did the research. So.
Okay, thank you. The other day one, we talked about abstract, and we said an abstract is the shortest form of a document, and it is really a summary. Typically, for theses or for thesis research proposals, we normally talk of summary. Most guidelines will say summary. And then for scientific papers, we say abstract. So a summary may be a little longer, 2 pages or much longer, 3 pages, but an abstract is normally short, just a few, 250 to 300 words. So I think this is what we are saying. An abstract is the shortest form of a document, normally following the title. So after the title, abstract. And a summary will carry more details, sometimes carries some data illustrations, and graphs, pictures, something to demonstrate. And this is why we were insisting on abstract, because very rarely in a thesis proposal will you see the need for a graph, picture, a table that you're picking from literature to justify. No. It is just text written to explain what you're doing, your objectives, and how you will do them, because it's a summary. So it includes everything that is in the proposal. And that's why you see we are coming to the tail end of it to write the summary. It should be definitive rather than descriptive. So these things of this thing is about some details in, tell us those details. This thing is about issues to do with feeds and feeding. The feeds and feeding are A, B, C, D. Don't say this write-up or what is contained in these pages is all about feeds and feeding. Be specific. And the abstract should be factual. Should be factual. Don't say, in this proposal, we present 2 important frameworks that are being worked on. You simply say, in this proposal, 2 important frameworks, one, this one, and the other one are being addressed. Yes, this is a good abstract for especially for journals. Yeah, papers, 200 to 250 words, and it is often one paragraph. Now for theses, it's more, it can go to 3 pages, 2 pages. But for proposals, it is still short. You cannot, normally 1 page. Yeah, you cannot do 3 pages. And normally 1 page is good enough. But it should be readable and understood as an independent piece of writing, because this abstract can be put in databases. The department may want to collect and say, our students are working in these areas of research and what. So they will pick your abstract and put it on the website, ongoing research, master's, ongoing research, PhD. And because of this, it should be readable and understood. We should not read the abstract and then have a need to look at the main body of the proposal. Once we read the abstract, it is clear and we understand what you're doing. Where you are not sure about anything, including word count, please follow the guidelines or ask your supervisor. Sometimes supervisors will have a set of theses, 2, 3, 5, and they normally will pick those good ones that were done by very excellent students. That can be a good first source of contact for you to look at how are the theses designed, what is the word count, how do the pages flow, and so on and so forth. We said everything has a background, and this is interesting. So sometimes you read the background and students are saying the experiments in this study will be 2. The first experiment is this. No, introduce what you're talking about and introduce it with a background statement to originate the study. Goat feeding is important in this region because the region is a dry land and there are shrubs that the goats feed on. Nonetheless, this has been the case over the years, and due to aspects of climate change, there is a decline, or they are disappearing. This study, therefore, addresses. You see the entry point. You've constructed at least 2 sentences, and then the first sentence after that is now linking to. The focus of this study, therefore, is this, and that is then you are now bringing in the overall objective, and then specifically it will address this. And then the key methodology, not reproducing what you've again written, but key methodology, and where that key methodology has common things, you simply mention it. You say, for the measurement of nitrogen, the Kjeldahl method will be used. Now, and you don't need a reference. Kjeldahl is known even to those that are not in the soil sciences and whatever. So that means you provide a background statement from which the study originates. We must see objectives of the study within this piece, and a brief key methodology, as I already said this. Yeah. Now, a good abstract of your proposal should not contain references or tables or figures or graphs or maps. No. It should be limited of abbreviations or acronyms, unless they are standard or are explained. But from what we are saying, this is 1 page, sometimes half a page. And if you start explaining acronyms, then you're eating away the space. Yeah, so abbreviations or acronyms unless they are standard to explain. Things like IPM, that is standard, FAO, that is standard, people will know, so on and so forth. It should not contain cited literature. So this is the section of the proposal where we don't have cited literature. It should not contain references to illustration, so we don't say as indicated in table this or table this. This challenge is important, and it is highlighted in the literature section. Brackets table this. No, it should not have these references. Okay, that is it about the abstract or the summary. And again, we shall pause it at that in case there are any questions, experience sharing, so we can learn from each other. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doctor, and allow me to invite Andy. Maybe can share his experience, or if he has question, please Andy, introduce yourself and ask the question. Andy, can you hear us?
Okay, if there is none, we shall be happy to continue.
Okay, please, Doctor. Please go ahead. Thank you.
As we mentioned earlier, a title is a name given to a document. So unless you are sure about the contents of the document, there's no way you are going to give it a name. And the name is the shortest, you can call it shortest abstract in this time, or shortest summary. Now, you can't have the shortest summary from a situation where you don't have the written document. It is a phrase and not a sentence. And therefore, we usually don't have full stop at the end. But depending on the guidelines, the university might have a guideline saying put a full stop at the end of a sentence. It should be simple. It's an entry point for readers, so it should be simple to understand. But simple doesn't mean street language. Rather, depending on the audience you are targeting. If it's an academic audience, for example, if you are targeting breeders, then the DNA in a title is okay. But if you are targeting readers, including politicians, okay, DNA today is becoming very popular. But if you unpacked what DNA actually means, very few people would know DNA. Okay? If you are working again on banana, for example, why don't you use banana in the title and Musa, is it Musa what? SP. Musa SP, put it somewhere else, either in the narrative, the text that is following, or in what we call keywords, so that you simplify the title and people will be very sure about what the proposal is about. Usually, a title is read by most readers because it is the first thing to appear. Therefore, it should be used to sell out the proposal or novel. Make it, phrase it in a way that is attractive enough to draw attention from even passers-by. I know many of you have traveled through airports, and as you wait for the next flight, you move in some shops and whatever, and you might see a book that actually it talks about the exact area you are concerned with, and very likely you'll pick it and try to look through and see whether it's worth buying. So that's the title. Read an abstract. So that, and the rest of the subsections in the proposal. And if it doesn't, then it will be a switch off for readers. After reading the title, you go to abstract, the abstract is saying something else. Of course, usually you don't waste time with such a document. Okay, a good title. Yes, briefly describes the contents of the proposal of the article. And many people end at the abstract. After reading the title, they read the abstract, and then they make a decision whether to continue or not. So those two must be consistent and eventually reflective of the overall content of the proposal. Again, the other day we said writing with many brackets, abbreviations, is going to cause long sentences. And you remember we said scientists don't have sufficient memory to take in and to keep referring to dictionaries, to synonyms for what you actually mean at every point. So you try to avoid acronyms, abbreviations, brackets. Where the bracket ends normally. Okay. Instead of using a bracket, you put a full stop where your phrase, your sentence stops. Then start the next sentence elaborating what the bracket is bringing in as an explanation to what you have meant. Maybe I can say it again. When you write something, a bracket usually comes in to elaborate, to give examples of what you have said. So instead of putting a bracket, put a full stop and start giving examples as part of the narrative. Okay. Putting formulas and jargon in the title will confuse readers right from the beginning. Because if there's jargon that the reader doesn't understand, it means right away they have to start by looking up in the dictionaries and whatever, or other documents that explain the meaning of that jargon. Yes, avoid phrases like a study of the effect of something. If you delete a study of, the title can effectively start with the next, say, effect of this and this and on that. That's a good title. An inquiry into well, many arts and social sciences use such titles, but they are not common in science. Observations on. Yes, this refers to our colleague from Malawi. Make the most important words stand out, usually by putting them first. For example, the effect of nitrogen on maize. Supposing maize is the most important thing. So you will be referring to the effect, the emphasis on the effect of nitrogen. But maize is the most important. How about response of maize to nitrogen? Response of maize to nitrogen. The focus is on maize and not nitrogen. Okay. Yes. The longer the title, the more specific you become. So articles have longer titles because they are addressing an aspect of a given study. A thesis will have a shorter title, and a project will have even a shorter title. A book will have even 2 words. Beans in Africa, for example. But a project will be more elaborate, something like a drought-resistant bean varieties in Africa. Okay. And a study will have even a more specific, more elaborate title because it is more specific than a project. Comment on this, I don't know, we can't interact, but we have examples of titles here. And if it were possible, you would associate them with, for example, educating a girl child. Educating a girl child is a title, but it's not showing us what's wrong with it. But it would be a good title for a book. For people who are interested in girl children, it would make a lot of sense. But if we added, for example, challenges in educating a girl child, but even a girl child, I think as we become more specific, we need to know what kind of girl child. Under 5, teenagers, or what? Educating a rural girl child, urban, single mother, single mother. Okay. Then we have more people, less erosion. This can also be a book, but probably not a title for a proposal because it's not specific. It's not leading us into a given direction. What do we want to do about more people, less erosion? Reading of food for food security. Again, this can be a book, but not a title for a proposal. Okay, now we have classical titles which lend themselves towards thesis research. you will excuse us because we didn't know what the profile of audience we are going to face. We selected examples without help of that profile. So you can, at least one of the examples might relate more with your kind of work. For example, a study on enhancement of resistance against northern leaf blight, and you see Exerohidium tassicum disease in maize, Z-mice, in a given location, maybe Cabanyolo. Now, what we are saying here is that this can be a good title for a thesis work, but something like a study on is redundant. So we can start with enhancement of resistance against northern leaf blight, and then whatever, that scientific name is also redundant because it's making the title complicated to some readers. So we take it out and put it in keywords, or explain using simple terms and then putting it in bracket. And then disease in maize, again Z-mice, and then Cabanyolo. Well, not all studies require a location, because if a study is cross-cutting, or it covers a big part of the world, then we don't put the location where we are going to do that research. Rather, that goes to materials and methods, where we have to characterize the location in terms of climate, if necessary, vegetation, soils, and so on and so forth, and longitude and latitude, so that somebody can relate with you directly wherever he is. Okay, so this is an improvement on the previous title, enhancement of resistance against northern leaf blight, but we have still left the scientific names, which can also be omitted to make it even simpler. Increasing nitrogen, N in bracket, utilization efficiency in drought-tolerant maize. So the rates can be omitted because they call it superfluous. It's too much information for nothing. So we can remove all those. Increasing nitrogen utilization efficiency in drought. Yeah, this is after removing all those rates. Development of species-specific microsatellite markers. For that, again, there's a scientific name, via high throughput sequencing. I'm sure this relates to some people's work. We picked them from some projects, some proposals. Growth characteristics and yield of Arabica coffee, promising selections and under Sidina. I mean, that's too much. If it is a research proposal, the title should be a label. And some of these can tempt you to put a full stop at the end as if it is a sentence. And so on and so forth. We will give you these. There are some other examples here. Some of them, you should be able to improve them. you should be able to make some improvements on them. Yes. So we said a title is a name. It represents the contents of a document. And therefore, it should come last, because you can't give a name to something you don't know. And the title is a phrase. It's not a sentence, so you don't have to put full stop. And we have seen people putting full stop even on subtitles. So you wonder whether they have an idea about the grammatic rules. A title should not be complicated to readers. Leave the complication to those who will continue with the inverted pyramid, because they understand that stuff better. A title, sometimes a title, the guidelines will tell you how many words maximum you should go to. But I would imagine that it's best to state the title the way you want and then begin to summarize to the level that is in the guidelines. I think that's all. This is something that you are used to, you are using. Maybe the presentation might add some value to what you do routinely as a student. And best, if you read many documents, many papers, many proposals, and attend seminars, that's where you will gauge what we are talking about against what the other students are doing, and that will help you to do it better. Okay, so questions? Questions?
Thank you so much, Prof. Let me now request from participants such that they can ask questions. But from now, I have some 15 who were raised their hands, and I'm going to start with Florence. Please, Florence, unmute yourself and introduce, then ask the question. Florence, can you hear us? I can feel that Florence is facing some challenges. And now I'm going to call Brian. Please, Brian, unmute yourself and introduce yourself. If you want to give comments, please go ahead, or a question. Brian, can you hear us? John, can you hear us? Okay, thank you so much.
Okay.
Oh,
thank you.
Brian, please go ahead. Yes, please.
Yes, thank you. This is Brian from Zambia, west of Lusaka. Yeah, I have a question, especially on the titling. You mentioned about some redundancy words that needs to be removed from the title as you are naming your project. But then what I've noticed, especially in some research journals or research articles that are being published, to find that these things are still there, are still part of some of the titles for some of research articles that are being published in some of the journals that are out there. So I just wanted to get a comment from you over that. Can we say that's a wrong way of doing it, or it still remain something that is part of practice? What is just your comment over that? Thank you.
Well, my comment is scientific writing. This relates to scientific writing. Scientific writing is the writing of the scientific work. Because you remember we said a scientist has no time. A scientist is factual. And a scientist, the memory is saturated, so they don't want comprehensive text. This is to a scientist. But now, this is to a scientist who has been informed. But if you are working with a scientist who is not informed, they will do it another way. And also, this depends on the writers of the guidelines. If their background is not precautioned about some of these things, everything will pass. And even papers that have been published have problems. So there's no, we are not going to take it as a rule and say that this journal is bad, this is good, because they are not following what you know. No, within what they know, that is good. And indeed, if you are going to follow the other journal, you have to write the way they accept their publications. So I don't know whether I have answered the question.
Yes, you have, because basically I just wanted to get a comment, because I've been seeing this in many of the journals and I've been wondering, so okay, when you're reading around issues of titling and things like that, you find, okay, we need to avoid redundancy in the way you are naming or coming up with a title, because certain words basically don't add anything, like in an example that you give, a study of, an analysis of, a discussion of. So such additions at the beginning of the title, they are kind of redundant, just like you have put it. But we still see these things being part of the articles that are being published. Then you wonder why we are seeing all these variations in the way things are in the academia or in the scientific, in the scholarly world. Thank you so much. I get your response.
And I can assure you, you are going to see a lot of odds in different publications. You will become an editor to some of these, or a reviewer to some of these publications, and generate some of weaknesses to do with it, technicalities or writing style. Next.
Thank you so much, Professor. Florence, please, I've already given you the right to talk. Florence, can you hear us?
Yes.
Please go
Good
ahead.
afternoon.
Introduce yourself. Yes, please.
My name is Florence, and I'm in Machakos University. I just finished my master's from KU, and I just wanted to know at what point do I include the summary and not the abstract when I'm doing a proposal for donors?
Follow their guidelines.
Mm-hmm.
Usually you don't have an abstract and a summary.
Okay.
The two are more or less talking about the same thing, but summary in more detail, including figures and so on. A few figures, of course. Not all the figures.
Mm-hmm.
For example, in a report, it's just picking out highlights, but an abstract is even shorter, 200 to 300 words, without referring to figures, without using citations, without your own information of the
from now
or paper. One or two. Okay, if there is nothing, Then we go to the next. No
Yes, please.
question?
Shepard also have given him right to talk. Shepard, please go ahead introduce yourself and ask the question. Okay, it seems that Shepard is facing some technical challenges.
I
Allow
think
me to.
we are running out of time. Let's get one example
Oh, please go
of
ahead.
a proposal draft or sections of it that participants have worked on as during this process of the workshop.
There was a lady yesterday that was eager to share.
They can present a title if they have already derived it. They can present objectives, but before they present, they have to tell us where they are coming from, not the background, sort of how did they think about, what caused them to think about this study, the background, and then they tell us the title and the objectives, and we see whether they match. Doesn't matter whether they have materials and methods or whatever, but materials and methods, again, we will need the objectives and the title.
Thank you so much, Prof. Participants, we can raise hands and then I will allow you to talk.
Yeah, they should take advantage of this.
Yeah.
Yes.
Participants, please. Shakila, I have already given you the right to talk. Do you have some to present?
No, mine is a question.
Yes.
Okay, quickly.
Yes,
quickly,
go ahead.
quickly.
We can hear you.
No, I'm not presenting, but I have a question concerning the topic, the title, if that's okay, I may ask.
Go ahead, we can hear you.
So my question is, can you have like one of your objectives or even a research question as the title still?
Objective is a subset of the title. The title is higher than the objective. It will,
and the title summarizes all the objectives.
All the
ties
objectives.
them together.
Yes. So
Okay, for example, say, one of your objectives is to analyze for example, the impacts of COVID-19 on the performance of various businesses. Doesn't that still fit as a topic and it's already summarized?
To analyze. Why analyze? It's an activity actually. Isn't it? Because it doesn't have the why you analyze it. And the tail end of if you add a tail end to the activity, pointing at the problem. What is the activity? What is the objective actually addressing? When you analyze it, so what? What do we get from it? And the tail end can be constructed in a title. Am I clear?
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shakila. Participants, anyone who has the presentation here?
They should not shy away. Anything
please,
they have.
Anything, yes. Please.
It's for learning purposes.
Yes. All of us here, we are to learn. Please present something which we have.
Or does it mean that nothing has been gained from this workshop?
Or there is no,
or there was no need for.
Participants, please. Raise your
Okay.
hands.
Even if you have made no improvement on your work, give us your title and we have a look at it and the objectives.
This is
Patrick,
also,
I can see your hand here. Go ahead,
also
introduce
called peer
yourself.
review.
Patrick, do you have something to present? Okay, Patrick cannot hear us. Danielle, do you have something to present? I can see your hand. Danielle, can you hear us? I think also is facing some challenges.
I can hear you.
Oh, please, go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Professor, and everyone. I've picked today's session well. The question I had is more broad since Mandy's training. What I wanted to ask is, I'm interested in writing a proposal for PhD. My background is pharmacy. So I would like to know from Professor what I shouldn't do in a PhD thesis, which maybe I would be allowed to do in a master's thesis, or vice versa for the other people. Like what is specific for PhD, what shouldn't I, do for PhD, which I could maybe be allowed to do for undergraduate, or that's all. Thank you.
Okay. I don't know whether there are rules to that, but a PhD is Doctor of Philosophy. You must bring into the pool of knowledge, existing knowledge, something new. You must, and substantially new. For example, the other day, one colleague asked about what would be appropriate for using e-learning in education systems. Maybe I should say in Africa. That the problem was that when COVID-19 came, it could not allow physical interactions between the teachers and students. And so by so doing, affected education. So he was asking, what kind of PhD problem could I address in order to graduate? And then I said, if you could design a model, e-learning model, where doing practicals physically is not necessary, and you get this, the equivalent of knowledge obtained through conventional means, that would be new knowledge, which is substantial and which is good for PhD. You see what I mean?
Yes,
But
Professor, I understand.
if you are doing a master's, you are being introduced to the basics of doing research.
I understand, Professor.
And so you can, for example, do adaptive research, where if we in Tanzania, they worked on a problem, but under a different agroecological zone. You can claim that the agroecological zone in Mozambique is different. So although this thing worked in Kenya or Tanzania, it is not likely to work the same way as it worked in Tanzania. So that is actually drawing you to a certain hypothesis and designing the study under a different agroecological zone. And that's enough for master's, but not PhD. Because the principles, the theory has been established. The difference is that you can use it, apply it to another location. That's not enough for a PhD.
I understand.
PhD is Doctor of Philosophy. And you can read about what that means.
That answers me, Professor. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
I can present, if I can have some time, I can present. My name is Seth Shikuku from Maseno University in Kenya. And maybe I can go ahead and present the topic and the objectives if I'm allowed.
Please go ahead.
Not topic, title.
Title, sorry.
Yeah.
So the title is a preoperative cytological characterization of soft tissue lesions for patients attending surgical clinics at Kitale County Hospital.
Okay, can you summarize the problem? What is it? What is causing all this?
Well, the problem, patients who attend the surgical clinic, they have to be done biopsies, which take a long period turnaround time for them to be given their results. And therefore, this is a way of studying the cells just by taking a sample using the needle. And then you're able to get to screen for the lesions, those that are malignant and those that are normal or rather benign lesions. So this reduces the turnaround time to which the results arrive for management of the patients.
Okay. So can you, is it possible to beam the title?
Sorry?
The script.
Can you beam the title and the objectives on the screen?
Can we share the title and objectives?
Well, I don't have a document on this computer, but that's the title I have just in the head.
It sounds a mouthful.
Well,
yeah.
So maybe I can come back again. That is
we give you a few minutes to look for the title and objectives.
Yes, and you share the screen. Okay. Matilde, please, do you have anything to present? If you have, go ahead. I can see your hand. Matilde? Thanks. She's facing some problems. Rhoda, I can see your hands. I have already allowed you to speak.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Okay, Matilde,
Hello?
yes, go ahead.
Yes,
Rhoda,
hello?
Yes, Matilde, go ahead.
Yes, I'm Matilde. I'm come from Mozambique at Edward Mundland University. My question is about the title. The title depends on different types of recession. So for example, articles, books, theses, and so on. So my question is, how must be the title in the thesis? Must it be more specific or more short? My title of my proposal thesis is Fiscal Risk, Monetary Policy, and Microeconomic Stability in Mozambique. Is this correct? Or is more extensive, or there is not show the more or less the main objective of the main focus of the thesis, of the problem of the thesis? Thank you.
Okay. Unfortunately, the title cannot be beamed, but we would like to, first of all, a thesis is focused. It's focused. So each of those can be a thesis research element. And then two, even if they had to be together in the title, we want to see how related they are, because the output and the research team and the facilities will be should be shared within each of those actually is going to result into a different objective. So for a thesis, it's going to be too wide. And if you did problem analysis, you will unlikely end up with that kind of title. It will be much more focused, and each of them will take a big budget, different equipment, labs, and it will not fit in 2 years of, I don't know, did you say PhD or master's?
PhD, professor, PhD.
Again, with the PhD, we are looking at new things. And to be able to get a new thing, you must be very focused. So each of those would need to be analyzed, and you get a cause from which you get an objective, from which if you turn the objective into a question, you would have no literature around it to say, if you do this and this and this, you get this. I'm being a bit. So that title has 3 components which are unrelated. And that is a feature of a title that is not derived from analysis. It's just coming from your head. It would be good for probably a project. But at the same time, I didn't see what you are going to do with those elements. It's as passive as a book title. Book title is allowed to be passive because it covers a lot of things.
So in your opinion of the professor, the title must be put effect or the impact of risk or fiscal risk in macroeconomic stability?
I wish I was able to read the title, because now I don't even remember what it is. But I remember there were 3 keywords in the title.
Thank you, Prof.
And effect, we have to be careful with effect. Effect research has been done. Most of the effects can be predicted. So impact is more of a long-term effect, and it covers a big area. So we normally don't do impact unless we have a time range from when the effect started to when the impact can be assessed. So if impact is not, you cannot do impact in a PhD, but a master's is okay.
Thank you, Prof.
Hello, Prof. Maybe I can project, if I'm given a chance, that is Seth, the topic that I just shared.
Please.
Please go ahead.
I've not been given the rights to project, maybe if you can allow me. Thank you.
The numbers are dropping. But that's okay. Exactly that 990 something. I don't see that. 20. But we started right wing compensated. Yeah. Is there still on? I can respond to some questions.
Are you able to see my screen kindly?
Yes, yes, we are
Yes, we
seeing.
can see.
Yes, that this thing is blinking at me. Great. Operative psychology, characterization, substitution lesions at Chitale County Hospital in Western. General objective to determine preoperative cytological to screen is an activity to correlate to profile. The general objective is an object, is a specific objective A. No, it is this screen. Hello?
Yes, Prof.
Yeah, so maybe we can start by giving comments so we can move forward. First of all, when you say general objective, which is to determine, by the end of 3 years or 2 years, this is PhD or? Well, by the end of the time of your study, you can be able to determine. Ideally, a general objective is above a specific objective. So it is something that you cannot determine. I mean, you cannot achieve for the lifetime of the study. You achieve the specific objectives, and then this will contribute to achievement of that other objective. So when you say determine preoperative cytological characterized soft tissue lesions, that is achievable. And you will notice that your general objective is the same as the title.
Yeah, but also, when you address the specific objectives, you will answer to the title. So the title is saying preoperative cytological characterization of soft tissue lesions in Kitale. We don't see the problem there.
Yeah.
What is it? And then what strategy are you proposing to use to address that problem? Now, down here, especially specific objectives, when we do specific objective 1, we should dent the problem specified in the title. And when we do the second objective, we further dent or reduce or increase depending on where you want to go on the problem specified in the title. The same thing with the specific objective 3. But what I'm seeing with specific objectives, these are activities. These are activities. Because if you screen, what value is going to come out? And if you correlate cytology results, what value is coming out? And correlation is rather an interpretation of the results. You have the tables, the figures, and now you are trying to say what these figures mean narratively. What do these figures speak? And within that interpretation, you are getting data from data and correlating, generating more to support your argument. So ideally, you don't have specific objectives addressing the problem embedded in the title. And then the title might be okay for people in your discipline, it might be okay, assuming you have this kind of many members in this discipline who will benefit from it. But in the title again, you don't have to specify Kitale Hospital, because normally the problem prevails beyond the hospital, your hospital. That's what we think in that region. So it can be in Western Kenya, but pre-operative cytological characterization of soft tissue can be done without the location, because this is the open science.
And the information you get from that is useful for somebody in India, exactly, in Japan, in Germany.
Yes.
Otherwise, once they see at the end of the title, Western Kenya, Chitala,
then that is
then you've localized your work.
Yes.
Kitale
Hospital is part of the materials and methods. Where are you going to do this study? And that is if you really need to. Well, by mentioning Kitale Hospital in materials and methods, you are giving credit to the hospital. But otherwise, if it's a lab study, it has nothing to do with the Kitale, because it's not environmentally affected. This pre-operative cytological characterization. How is it? What if we did it in Uganda, in a Mulago hospital? Do you think you will get different results?
Yes, Prof. I think so, because when it comes to health, it is population-based. And probably there is something that cohort of population is exposed to within that region that is causing these lesions.
You see, you are doing characterization. It's not the problem. You are characterizing, which is methodology. Will that change? Although you are working on soft tissue, the procedure for characterizing is unlikely to change because you have moved to another location.
Yes, what I expect is that the results from this location, maybe I can give an example. If the lesions that we are having in this place, they are mostly benign, they are not malignant, then that says that something is different in this population. But probably in another population, those soft tissue masses, the lesions actually are masses. Those masses could be fatty masses. So there could be something that is related to that population that is causing them to have the masses, that is soft tissue masses. And so just defining the actual hospital is if this hospital has a lot of this particular population having a specific, that is characteristic of cytology, that is the cytological characterization of that specific mass. That means the cells, the characteristic of that particular cell that we are finding most frequently. And so it is preoperative because the problem is most of these characterization are done post-operation. That is, somebody has to go through surgery to have the mass removed, a biopsy for them to be done a histology test. But now here, we're doing it before the operation takes place. So we are able to solve in terms of cost, in terms of complexity of procedures, and be able to screen and say, this is malignant, so it has to be given attention. Because we have given attention to all patients within the same group, but yet there are patients who would require a clear attention earlier and given a first priority. That is, if it comes to surgery. Thank you.
Yes, I think your explanations are okay. And we can tell that you're really deeply soaked into your work. But the thing is, for example, look at number one, to screen, to correlate, to profile. And what we are saying is that you don't have specific objectives, but you have activities that you're doing towards arriving at what you want done. And the best way now to get specific objectives will be to ask yourself, questions that take you at another level. For example, why do you want to screen? And the answer for the reason that you want to screen for cytomorphological characteristics would be closer to a specific objective. So it's not that you're dropping these, there are things that you're actually going to do as activities. And the same for the title. Why this thing? Why this operative cytological characterization? Why do you want to characterize? Once you arrive at that answer, that will be very close to the title. Exactly. Otherwise, the pre-operative cytological characterization will actually find itself into an activity as well. So you are more focused on the real work to be done than the objective. Now, the general objective would be something like maybe improve the diagnostics or improve something like that. And because as we've told you, the general objective is something we contribute to. It is not something that we can attain for the lifetime of the study.
Thank you, Prof. That's
but if you
do you get that logic?
I've got it very well, Prof.
Okay, thank you.
If you look at the last specific objective, it has more sense compared to the other two. This computer, can we? Yes.
To profile preferences of different soft tissue lesions. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So if you are when profiling, you need to screen. This correlation is actually not an activity because it has no output. The output is going to be part of the distillation of the message that is coming out. So this second special objective, the third seems to be the specific objective you are addressing, but I don't know how that is answering to pre-operative cytological characterization. Rather, in the profiling, the relevant prevalence rate, you are actually doing the characterization. But again, characterization up here is for soft tissue lesions. And these are keywords not appearing anywhere. Oh, there is this, yeah, there is something in, okay. Yeah, some of them are appearing there. Anyway, I think it would require us to get your problem clearly explained, and then we would be able to say whether pre-operative cytological characterization is the answer to the problem.
Thanks, Prof. That's very good.
Now we have 4 minutes left. Oh, should we add some minutes since we started late?
Yes, please, because I can see we have many questions there from attendees, so maybe we can go ahead for just a few minutes such that we can try to cover some of the questions.
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much. Paulo, Bernardo, Paulo, I've already allowed you to speak. Please, if you have a presentation, go ahead, or a question. Okay, seems that he is facing some.
George Otieno says that for the objective to be smart, then the research title need to contain the locality. At the same time, the target population might be homogeneous or heterogeneous. No, including a location in the title. What we are saying is that it localizes your work. The place of the location is the methodology, and the location is only a victim of your study. That study can be done elsewhere. Maybe the previous presenter is talking about Chitala Hospital because that's where they work. But otherwise, they would have been in another hospital. If they were working in Nairobi Hospital, then we would see Nairobi Hospital. So the same work that you're doing at Chitara, the same study can be done in any other place. What we are looking for is the results and the methodology. Was it a sound methodology? Are these results replicable? And so on and so forth. Yeah, but I also know, for example, in some studies in public health, location becomes very, very important. If you're working in a slum, then you have to say Chibera. In Chibera, this such that the conditions are typical to that situation. But
there are also types of slums. So
yeah,
you find something that
covers the
that type of
slums.
slum.
Yeah, types of slums. So you really don't need, and this is very common, especially for colleagues from economics. They always include in their title a case of Somaliland, a case of Kajiado district, a case. Now, that first of all, that is wrong because the case study. When they describe the methodology, all studies in statistics, you know what a case of a particular selected spot or selected sample. Now, when they say a case of, they are actually not doing a case study. So that case of, its place is in the methodology and not the title. That's what we are saying. But it is something very important to the extent when we say you localize your work. If somebody in Uganda picks your staff, or from Sudan, from Morocco, and they said, "How? I think this is just concerned with Chitara people. Now, I have no business with it." So you will have very important findings about these lesions and the sciences for international consumption, but you localized it and locked it up. Even within Kenya, somebody from Nairobi who has no business to do with Chitara, they will say, these Chitara people have lesions. This is up to them.
But it's more important when dealing with the donors, because for them, they are looking at impact. What kind of impact will your effort cause to the number of population? So if you are looking at Kitale Hospital, that is a very small number. Yet the problem you're addressing covers up to India, up to where? So when they are taking value for money of your effort, they take the money you have suggested in the budget, divide it by the population of people in Kitale Hospital, compared to another project that is covering up to India, up to Australia. If they take the same amount of money and divide by that population, it will make more economic sense to them. And that is part of the evaluation or the justification. So, and then supposing you are working on malaria. Malaria is tropical, it's a tropical problem. And then you localize in Kitale Hospital. I think you are being unfair. You should, name the proposal to the scope of the disease so that people see associate with you from all over the world. Okay. Maybe we get one more.
There's in the chat room. Thank you for the training. Long live Ruvora. May I share my study, please? There is something shared here. Impact of climate change on forest ecosystem services in River Sironko catchment system, Eastern Uganda. To map the forest extent and ecosystem services between 2000 and 2022. To assess the past, current, and future climate change projections. To examine the effects of climate risk, drought, and flood on the supply of ecosystem services. This is a very interesting submission. We would like to know, is this PhD or master? Well, if you don't have the permission to speak, I think climate change is one of the areas that has been, should I say, highly misconstrued, because climate change is so broad that it has a lot of parameters and variables. First of all, we can only say there is climate change when we have data of over 3 decades, 30 years. So right from the title, when you say impacts of climate change on forest ecosystem services, the ecosystem services are what? 7 of them. Now, which particular ecosystem service are you looking at? Which, and then you're saying to map the forest extent and ecosystem supply services between.
In the River Sironko.
They want to map the forest extent and ecosystem service. This is.
But will you be answering it to the title?
Yeah, will you be answering to the title as you map the forest extent? And now you're looking at 2 years, 22 years, or 2000 to 2002. So maybe you have retrospective studies or what. But when you say to map the forest extent, what is this? There is something missing. To map the forest.
What is extent?
Okay, doctor, I have already given him permission to speak.
Yes.
So maybe,
But this one requires a lot of interaction with your supervisors to clear these things.
Yeah.
Yes, I have seen theses on climate change, and I can say with confidence that this is one area where there is a lot of, I don't know how to even say it,
information.
A lot of misinformation, a lot of, the science is not fine-tuned. People just put something, boom, and they run with it, and what they are trying to discover, you don't know. To examine the effects of climate risk. At least here you've specified drought and flood on the supply of ecosystem services. So now you're saying that these ecosystem services are linked to, so I don't know, these ecosystem services are supplied naturally, they are in nature. So now what this is the, sorry, maybe we have discouraged you from, but please explain.
This page.
Donald, unmute yourself and please explain. Donald, are you there? Donald? I think he's facing some technical problems. It's not there.
Thank you. There is another one. Main objective of the study, understand fisheries governance. Now, the other day when we were talking about objectives, we said, please think about the verb that you're using. Because now at the end of the study, how shall we know that you've actually been able to cause understanding? So understand anyway. Specific assessment of governance structures and regulatory framework,
of Lower Zambezi fishery?
You see, research goes by prioritization. So assessment
of governance structure.
Governance structures. I mean, governance is very wide. You need to again unpack governance.
Are you going to assess the policy frameworks? Are you going to assess the human resource capital? That is, are you going to assess infrastructure? All these.
Yeah, and that would be.
Are you going to assess agencies and institutions?
Yeah. So ideally, for this proposal, you pin out what is the priority to be done, and it should be feasible. For example, policy will take you at least 5 years to either adjust or to do what, to reform or to create. Assessment of, I don't think we say assessment. Assess economic what? Contribution of fishing. These are very broad areas. Economic contribution of fishing to tourism and local fisheries. Okay. Again, for masters, we said you don't say and, because it becomes a lot of work. And if you say and, the two parts must be related so that you use similar facilities. Understand perceptions of how tour operators and local fishers value fishing. Now, if you collapse this, if you are able to do all these, will they address the title, the problem enshrined in the title completely? You find that some of these objectives are taking different directions and not quite focused on the problem summarized in the title. So again, a lot of work needs to be done. Are you there?
Lipa, I've already allowed you to speak. Are you there?
They might have gone.
Yeah, I think so. And I can see that many participants also, they are going. Now we are remaining with the 500, we were 900, so maybe we just.
But 500 is quite a big number as well. So we think it is still useful, but if you think you would like to put it to a close, that is also okay. Angelo says, how I wish we could be having many of these forums. Africa awake. God bless you all. Learned a lot. I'll forever be grateful. Location is very important. Oh, computer links.
Dr. Nampala, maybe we can give the chance to Professor Rogeri also to close the meeting.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. Professor Rogeri, over to you.
Good afternoon, Rufaro. Good afternoon, facilitators. Good afternoon, participants to this interesting training course on proposal writing. I was not able to attend most of the sessions because this week we are very busy trying to select candidates. Some of them are attending this course, candidates for scholarship in our programs. But from the session that I attended, I could see a strong interaction between the facilitators and the participants, which shows the importance that the participants are giving to this critical training, which is was lacking in some of the people that are doing PhD. They could write proposals for their master and PhD. This training we identified, as I mentioned at the beginning, because we
recognize the lack of skills in terms of data analysis, in terms of proposal writing amongst the Africans. And because we believe that by providing this kind of training course, we can contribute a lot for improving research, improving, which in turn will contribute to generate more technology, more knowledge in Africa to contribute to agricultural transformation. So we decided to provide those courses. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you took all opportunity to learn with facilitator, great facilitators as Prof. Nampala and Prof. Tenua. I hope some of you will be attending the next training sessions that we are still providing next week on statistics, and then later on advanced academic writing, so that with this learning that we are providing, we are able to gain more skills, knowledge, so that we contribute to transform Africa in terms of agriculture, which is a really critical and important area in Africa. With these words, I would like to end all of you thanking all the facilitators, thanking the collaboration that the Center of Excellence in Agri-Food Systems of Edward Mondlane University made so that we provide this training. And also I would like to ask you participants so that you be in attention, because the World Bank or any entity hired by World Bank will contact you to check whether you really participated in those training courses. So please, when you receive any email coming from World Bank or any agency requesting you to answer whether you participate, please just answer yes, or if there's a survey, please respond to that survey, because it's important to us, but I'm thinking it's important to all of us that were involved in this training. With this, I would like to thank all of you and say goodbye, keep well, enjoy the next training. Thank you very much.
Thank you. A big thank you to our facilitators. A big thank you to Forum staff for handling this training. And a big thank you to Professor Rogerio from Eduardo Mondlane for funding this training. We want to thank all the participants for being part of this training. Like what Professor Rogerio said, that we meet next week. Let's meet next week and learn more. Thank you so much, and have a nice weekend. Bye.